What is going on, everybody? Teach back again with another video, and today we're talking about my final regular season power rankings. A part of me died saying that. Sad to see the regular season come to a close. I always get so excited once we're at September and it's like, man, football's on for half a year, and then you get to the other side of it and it's like, that hurts. But we still have playoffs, so still a lot of good football ahead of us. And actually, I encourage you to come back to the channel tomorrow. I have 5 videos up on the channel this week, so it's going to be a busy week for me. But tomorrow I'll have my playoff predictions. Today I'm going to give my final thoughts on some of the teams that won't be covered in that, go through my power rankings, and then tomorrow I'm going to give you my predictions all the way up till the Super Bowl, and you're going to see who I think comes away with the Lombardi. So stick around the channel. Also have some upcoming series starting on Wednesday, and then we're going to have a mock draft coming out on Friday and Saturday this week, plus the hurry up offense for those who are big fans of betting. We're going to have that coming out on Thursday. So a lot of content coming to you this week. Let's start talking about these power rankings. Man, Chicago Bears sitting on a gold mine right now with that number 1 overall pick. When I was doing my predictions last week, I was like, man, Houston can't in good conscience let the number 1 pick slip out of their hands. We'll talk about that in a minute. And, good on the Bears, right? You saw a lot of Nathan Peterman and, strong arm, but yeah, it didn't look great. And the Bears just aren't a good team. So now I guess they have a situation in a decision staring them in the face of Justin Fields or Bryce Young. I think ultimately it's going to be, we'll stick with Fields. They'll use that $100+ million in cap space. I think ideally on offense, and then you're going to trade down from 1. And they have so many teams: Carolina, Washington, the Raiders, the Colts. There's plenty of the Falcons, and there's plenty of other teams. The Texans, of course, could just trade back up into 1. A lot of different suitors out there, so they're literally sitting on a gold mine. I mean, this team is about to have draft capital for not just this year, but next year, and maybe some extra resources in 2 years' time. So good time to be a Bears fan. This is the time to buy in, right? If you're in that symbol biz, yeah, this is the time to buy the Chicago Bears, in my opinion. So then the Colts, down a spot. I mean, they lost to the Houston Texans. That's rough. Sam Ehlinger battled them back, honestly. Once they got to 17-7, I thought this game was kind of done. I just kind of thought Houston had it, but do want to give some credit there to the Colts. They did battle back. Michael Pittman with a good game, but they lost to the Texans at home. Man, that's got to be tough. And I really kind of thought they would win this game. Be good bookends for Jeff Saturday. He wins his first game as an interim, wins the last game. But yeah, no, he won the first one and then lost out. So for those who predicted Jeff Saturday was just kind of a scapegoat and somebody there to so they could tank, congratulations, you were spot on with that assessment. Broncos up a spot. Yeah, they beat the Chargers, but the Chargers, while they did play their starters for longer than I anticipated, they also pulled it out at a point in which this game could have gone in a very different direction, right? So kind of hard to tell, but Russell Wilson, pretty good games to end the year, so that's exciting. And maybe if you're a Denver fan, you can now point to Nathaniel Hackett being the issue at hand for why the team disappointed so much this season. So if you're a Broncos fan, I think that's at least good enough narrative to carry into the offseason. Cardinals down a spot. It's David Blau. It was kind of interesting. They're the first to score. They're up 7-0. It's like, okay, maybe they're going to give San Francisco a run. Yeah, they did. Yeah, that game was hard to watch. That's I'm sorry, Arizona fans, but there might be a mean rebuild in your future, right? Like a change of head coach, a change of GM, and in turn, like DeAndre Hopkins, we'll see, but I can see him potentially being gone, shipped out for more assets. This team's going to have a really interesting crossroad and a really interesting decision to make this offseason. Do you try to, if you're 4th from the bottom, that's a hard place to say, hey, let's run it back, right? Like that's difficult. I think this team's in for some major retooling this offseason. Then we get the Texans. Jace Atkins. I had to put him in the picture here on the screen. What a game. The touchdown and the 2-point conversion for the win. And this is also just beautiful symmetry. It's like poetry. It rhymes. Week 1, Colts, Texans. Lovie Smith's too conservative, punts in overtime, doesn't go for it on a 4th down, and that results in a tie. And now the man is out here not only playing for the win, but going for 2, not even going the overtime route. The man has completely changed. Now, granted, Lovie Smith has been fired as the head coach. He's not coming back. So, it was a 1-year deal. It was just kind of a filler contract for him and a filler situation for Houston. Not really surprised by that outcome, but man, how about him? How about that going out on a win? And who knows? Former Bears head coach. He got Chicago the number 1 overall pick. They got to give this man some sort of position. He's got to be a defensive analyst or something. They got to do good by Lovie Smith. But for the Texans, to me, that's a major blunder. To me, I feel like that's going to cost, because even just even if you do get back to 1, the cost of flipping picks here with Chicago's going to be lofty. So I get it. You want to win games. I understand these guys, playing for contracts down the line and they're playing for pride. But yeah, that number 1 overall pick without the expense of potentially moving up would have been really, really nice if you're a Houston fan. Raiders down a spot. I mean, just that game kind of got ugly too. The Raiders and the Cardinals schemes kind of even played out similar, where they're playing these Titans of the NFL, the 49ers and the Chiefs respectively. And it's kind of interesting early on, like they're kind of keeping up, but then eventually the wheels kind of fall off and the Raiders expose themselves for who they actually are. So not a whole lot to talk about there. The Raiders are a bad football team. Rams, kind of the same thing. They did battle with Seattle. I do want to give them some credit there. Had moments and chances to win that game, and we'll talk about Seattle later, but that Quandre Diggs pick in overtime was bananas. But, as easy as it is for the broadcasters, I think, and spoken by a play-by-play broadcaster, as easy as it is to say, like, oh, Baker, you can't throw it with that much loft. He saw a wide open dude and just thought he had a game-winning touchdown. I really don't think there was that much going through his mind. So kind of a rough turnaround there for the Rams, because then otherwise we're talking about this team with a win, like maybe that keeps Sean McVay around. But I do want to talk about that too. Like Sean McVay, what they said on Sunday Night in America last night, PFT's, Mike Florio is talking about it's not just because he is tired or he's burned out or, wants to go into TV. He just doesn't want to deal with the Rams rebuild coming over the next couple of years, which savage. Man got a Super Bowl ring, and now he's like, I don't want to do the dirty work. So maybe he's gone. I mean, I don't know. The Rams are such an interesting team, but if McVay's gone, I think Stafford's retiring. At that point, Donald might as well. Bobby Wagner might consider it. This Rams team might look very, very different in a year's time. And then the Falcons at 25, they got a decent win. Desmond Ridder again taking not even baby steps. It's like when you have like a 6-month-old and it can crawl or whatever. That's the speed in which Desmond Ridder is moving towards progression. But progress is progress, so I'm not going to shame him there. And hey, you end the regular season with a nice win against Tampa Bay. And they were favored by 4. Like, they covered the spread. This wasn't just a win. Now, granted, half this game was Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask. So, this is not Tampa Bay at full strength. And there were points in which they were trailing to Tom Brady. So, not the biggest win of all time in Atlanta history. But nonetheless, a solid way to end the season. It'll be interesting to see what Arthur Smith and the Falcons want to do with the quarterback situation, especially with a win, moving themselves further away from the top of the draft. I'm thinking it might be Desmond Ridder next year. Okay, next set of teams here at 24, got the Carolina Panthers. Decided to go ahead and move them up a spot. I mean, again, not a team that I think is super impressive. I mean, a 10-7 win against New Orleans, I guess. I mean, I still think New Orleans has talent on that roster, so I do want to give them credit there. I mean, this New Orleans team beat Philadelphia last week, right? So, not a very pretty win, though. But, Carolina with a win, they move up a spot. So, congratulations, Panthers fans. Another team. And if you were to ask me, like when I do my mock this upcoming week, little spoiler alert, I'm going to have Carolina being the team moving up to 1. So, I think Dave Tepper wants to make a splash this offseason. I think that could be the way he does it. And then we get the Tennessee Titans down a spot. I mean, yeah. Winning your end game, and they didn't win. So, they're done. And I'll kind of talk about this with Dallas a little bit later on. It's really just kind of unfortunate. I understand why they do it more than Dallas with this insistence on running on early downs. Like, it just feels like how many times can you pound your head against the same wall? At least for the Titans, it's like Derrick Henry's your best player. I'll talk about Dallas later on and how frustrating that game was to watch. But yeah, the Titans, tried to ride Derrick Henry, and he, once he got going, he was solid. But ultimately you get the scoop and score for Josh Allen. Ultimately, Josh Dobbs feels like is not crazy and not elite as Ryan Tannehill is. It feels like a game where it's like, man, that little bit of an upgrade might have been enough to come away with a road win and seal up the division. But it was Josh Dobbs. The Titans fall short. So sorry, Tennessee fans. You go from 7-3 to 7-10. That's tough. And so where John Robinson, fired GM, is smiling at the Titans meltdown. But now Mike Vrabel with roster control, I'm really intrigued to see what he wants to do with this team. And then we get the Cleveland Browns down a spot. They lost to the Steelers. That game wasn't really pretty at all either. And Pittsburgh spot him a touchdown at the beginning of the game by not challenging. And then, ultimately Najee fumbles at the goal line. But, not a very encouraging game if you're a Cleveland fan. I don't really see a whole lot from the offense. I mean, some chunk plays from Nick Chubb. But, as excited as I was to see what Deshaun Watson be able to do with that offense, maybe it's just because they need another wide receiver on the outside. But yeah, it wasn't as pretty as I was hoping. And maybe that's part of that's Russ too, right? It's been a while since he played meaningful games. And maybe it's, needing some time to, meld and mesh with Kevin Stefanski in that offense. So maybe it's a myriad of things. Maybe it's one of those things. yeah, I'm just kind of disappointed by Deshaun Watson and what the Browns offense looked like once he got back. So they lose to the Steelers. They're down a spot. Commanders up a couple spots. That defense continues to play really good football. And Sam Howell. It definitely wasn't a perfect game like that. Interception he threw in the end zone, I legitimately don't know what he could have been looking at. There was 3 defenders staring him in the face. But nonetheless, that first touchdown to Terry McLaurin, there's some good balls in there. That other, deep pass down the right sideline to Terry McLaurin was an absolute dime. We got to see the rushing ability put on display. He kind of ran, even threw a defender for his rushing score. You kind of saw some of that at UNC. So it kind of got the full Sam Howell effect. And even on the broadcast, they're talking about, maybe could he be an option for someone starting next year? Ultimately, I think this team goes a different route, but if Sam Howell is who they kind of back into, and that's the guy that's ultimately going to be starting week 1 next year, as the guy who was my QB2, I'd be interested to see what it looks like. Again, I say this all the time, but just in case you weren't around the channel, Malik Willis, Sam Howell are my top 2 quarterbacks, not because last year's quarterback class was great and I thought they were studs, but because they had the highest ceiling. So I still want to see kind of where that ceiling could potentially take Sam Howell, especially with the full offseason of work. I still think Washington goes in a different direction, but if it is Howell, I'd be entertained. Saints down a spot, or 2 spots rather. Yeah, they lost to the Panthers. Carolina's probably a better team than I want to give them credit for. Why are the Saints ahead of them? I think the Saints have plenty of impressive wins. Plus, they got the nice bump last week beating Philadelphia. The Saints team had talent on its team. It just didn't really come all together. And part of that might be coaching, right? Dennis Allen, probably, as much as I do like him as a DC, a step down from Sean Payton, and a lot of Andy Dalton this season. Don't even see Jameis Winston. Michael Thomas misses a ton of time, and that's a great what if. What does this offense look like with Michael Thomas in the mix, right? But yeah, this is an interesting team. Obviously, given their cap situation, they are always a fascinating domino to see which way it's going to fall. And year over year, it's been, hey, we'll push that money in the future. And they already restructured Michael Thomas's deal, so they might be trying to do it one more time. I don't know what the quarterback contingency plan is then, but man, can't wait to find out. Then we got the Jets. I'm going to keep them here at 19. Last week, they moved down 6 spots. Part of that was just how the board ultimately played out. I felt like that was kind of harsh. But I'm going to keep them here at 19. Yeah, they lost. Joe Flacco's not very good, but Garrett Wilson is a stud. The defense played really, really good. And now we've seen Sauce Gardner, and I know Tyreek Hill is battling his ankle injury in this game, but in 2 consecutive weeks, Sauce Gardner has performed very, very well against DK Metcalf and Tyreek Hill. 2 of the best receivers in the game and 2 drastically different types of wide receivers. Yeah, Sauce Gardner, he's a top 5 corner in the league as is. I think he's in that top 5. Him and Pat Surtain are these 2 young corners that might become the next conversation of Revis and Nnamdi Asomugha for us, or Revis and Richard Sherman. I can totally see it. Those guys brought their game to a whole nother level this year, and Sauce's rookie really, really exceeded my expectations. So I want to give him a shout out here. I'm going to keep the Jets 19. I don't think they're a 20 or below squad. I still believe, especially that defense, even if it is Joe Flacco, Joe Flacco versus the Steelers would probably be favored. But with how good the defense is, I think that always gives them a shot. Leading into that conversation, the Steelers are up a couple spots at 18. This team finished the season really, really strong. And hey, like I just said, Malik Willis, Sam Howell were my QBs 1 and 2 last year. So where does that leave Kenny Pickett? He was QB 4. But as the year went on, he still gave me more and more to be excited about, especially his mobility and ability to run an offense outside the pocket. This week felt like I noticed it a ton. Najee eventually does get that touchdown after should have gotten one on that first drive. Deontay Johnson nearly got that first touchdown. But the big thing for me was, and obviously I'm texting Hurry Up Offense co-host JT Creed and Mason Cannon during the game, and first 25 minutes of the game, George Pickett's had 1 target. Then over the final 5 minutes of the first half, he had 3 targets, 1 resulting in a touchdown, 1 resulting in a chunk play down the sideline, and 1 that was almost this absurd toe drag, not even toe tap. Literally, I don't know how his feet even came close to touching blades of grass on the left sideline. So good things come when you throw the ball to 14. So I am hoping Pittsburgh, now that they're out of the playoffs, there is a change made at OC. Apparently, they're going to consult Kenny Pickett for that, which makes me think that probably Matt Canada's back, just because what does the kid know other than Matt Canada at the NFL level? Anyways, I hope they do make a change there, and I hope there's more explosive plays in the offense. I hope there's more work done to get those guys open on their own, and I want to see more George Pickens. 2 weeks ago he had 4 targets. This past week it took 25 minutes for him to even get his second target. So I want to see more of that. So as a Steelers fan, that's kind of what I'm hoping for. But also shout out to Mike Tomlin, another winning record or another season of a non-losing season. I don't know how he's reached 17 years. It really is a stat that should not exist. He went 8-8 with Duck Hodges, went 9-8 with Mitch Trubisky and rookie Kenny Pickett. That is unbelievable. Team number 17 is going to be the New England Patriots, down a couple spots. The Patriots are the Patriots. Mac Jones actually, I think, played pretty good this week, so let me not like sell him short. Rondre Stevenson, nice plays. Devontae Parker, that touchdown was awesome. And they did battle the Bills. Like they played like their season was on the line. So let me not be too harsh to the Patriots, but when it comes to going mano a mano against the Bills, there's only so long that offense is going to keep up. Plus those 2 kick return touchdowns. Ultimately, to me, that I mean, you look at the score; those kind of were the difference. So how different is that game if Nyheim Hines doesn't, take 2 kicks back to the house? That's an interesting what if. But even down the stretch, you get that bomb to Stephon Diggs. I felt like eventually it was just going to happen. There was going to be a play that started to create the separation between the Bills and the Pats. And, I think the kick returns ultimately were those plays, but then that Diggs touchdown kind of put the nail in the coffin. So Patriots did play a pretty good game. It was as good we've seen Mac Jones play this year. Maybe not the best, but one of his best games of the year. So something to be optimistic about for Patriots fans heading into the offseason. Top 16 now. Giants, I'm going to keep them there. Yeah, they lost, but they weren't playing starters. That, for all intents and purposes, that was not the same New York Giants team we're going to see next week playing on Saturday against the Vikings. So I'm not going to penalize them for that. Buccaneers. Let me move my head a little bit. They're down a spot. They lost, but only half the game was with Tom Brady. So again, they're going to lose because they're going to move down because they lost. And still, even then, wasn't pretty like the Chris Godwin fumble. Like this team still like is plagued with unforced errors, like self-inflicted wounds of penalties and turnovers continue to plague this team. So I don't know if they'll be able to beat Dallas, but man, playoff Tom Brady is hard to bet against too at the same time. So that's going to be a really fun wild card matchup. Packers, I'm going to keep Green Bay over Tampa Bay. Green Bay battled last night on Sunday Night Football, and I still think if Green Bay and Tampa went head to head, I just think I've seen enough of the last couple of weeks to believe in Green Bay versus like even when Tampa has looked good, there has still been a majority of the game. Like even when Brady goes on those 8-minute comebacks in the fourth quarter, or 3-minute comebacks if it's the Saints game, there's still 57 minutes that don't look good or 52 minutes that don't look very good. So I think I'd still like the Packers there, even though I know the Bucs are in the playoffs and the Packers are not. So just wanted to address that real quick. But yeah, just fell short. That red defense ultimately started to give up some chunk plays down the end of that contest, and the big plays for the offense were kind of few and far between, which is kind of unfortunate. And it felt like they could get to the 50-yard line, but once you got into the Lions territory, things kind of fell off the wheels. And that late pick, was it late third? Might have even been in the fourth quarter. The one that actually stood for Kirby Joseph, the one that actually could count. That was one of those reads from Rodgers where it's like, man, what are you looking at? I actually think that was late fourth. So still some head-scratching plays in there, but yeah, man, tough way to end the season if you're a Packers fan. You really had your hopes teased there. The win against the Vikings, and then before that, against the Dolphins on Christmas Day. You're like, okay, we're going to make the playoffs. And then the Lions, the team that eliminated from the playoffs, kept you out of the playoffs as well. How insane is that? And then, talk about the Lions. What a win. I mean, they're down, but let me just say, they're down a couple spots because the Jags and the Seahawks are in the playoffs, and this is my final power ranking, so I just kind of want to address this. And even with retrospect, I kind of wish I put the Jags 11 and the Seahawks at 12, but, it's one spot difference. Don't kill me over it. But I hate to move the Lions down because that was as good a game we've seen them play all year long. Also, can we talk about Ben Johnson calling that little hook and ladder on that fourth down play? How awesome was that? That guy's going to be such his head coaching stock is going to be fascinating to watch this head coaching carousel. But man, credit to the Lions and the Lions defense. Aaron Glenn was pumped up on the sideline. That unit played a great game. Aiden Hutchinson with a couple of huge sacks. And this one, Kirby Joseph. I mean, he had the one pick, but there were multiple times he had an Aaron Rodgers pass in his hands, right? So really impressed by how that defense closed out the season. Alex Anzalone felt like he was flying all over the field last night. And then the offense, Jared Goff was weirdly inaccurate and was just chucking passes straight to the ground, but then all of a sudden that kind of dissipated. And then that went away. And you get the 2 Jamal Williams touchdowns. Can we talk about that post-game interview? This guy is so emotional talking about his grandfather, and then immediately goes into like Jamal Williams, the same guy who was goofing around at his player intro at the beginning of the game, and he's like, stop sleeping on the Lions. We're the Detroit Lions. And it's like, all right, there we go. There's Jamal Williams that I know and love. So really good performance here for the Lions. 17 rushing touchdowns too for Williams. That's bananas. But yeah, really strong way to end the season. 9-8 winning season. And I said last week, like, even if they're eliminated, Detroit's gonna play that game honest. So wish I had put money on it. Could have put my money where my mouth is. But the Lions did just that. And I would be surprised if there's not some Lions fans in the streets of Detroit celebrating as if this is a Super Bowl. So good on the Lions fans there. Jags at 12, Seahawks at 11. These two teams both make the playoffs on the final day of the regular season, or their final day of the regular season. Jags beat the Titans. Seahawks with a win over the Rams and then some help from the Lions. They get in with the 7th seed in the NFC. And again, I kind of wish I flipped this now in retrospect, but hey, the Jags, it wasn't necessarily always pretty for that offense, right? Like you're trying to get cute in the first quarter, and then ultimately on the end around, Agnew can't handle it. It becomes a fumble. Trevor Lawrence misses wide open Zay Jones in the corner of the end zone, right? Like it wasn't always perfect, but the defense really stepped up, and that's what it kind of encourages me. It's honestly, it makes if the Jags had won this game 35-28, that doesn't really change how I think they stack up against the Chargers. But now that I've seen that defense kind of take it to another level, granted against Josh Dobbs, but really they made life hell on first down for Derrick Henry. Like that, anytime they ran on early downs, it was not easy to be able to move the line of scrimmage. So that kind of makes me change a little bit about how I think they could stack up against the Chargers next week. Still probably will take Los Angeles, but man, that Jags team's showing a lot of tough. And I mean, also, can we talk about how Doug Peterson apparently called that the season's going to come down to week 18 against Tennessee, and he was spot on. So what a turnaround job from Peterson. Lawrence looks like a completely different human being, and that defense with as impressive a game as they played all year long. So the Jags are certainly hot heading into the postseason. Then the Seahawks, Quandre Diggs, I kind of want to hit on this. The former Detroit Lion comes up with this crazy interception in overtime. And one, covering the ground was crazy, but the catch itself was gnarly. And the former Lion set the first domino down to eliminate the Detroit Lions from playoff contention, because then obviously Seahawks get the ball back. Jason Myers gets a second attempt at the game-winning field goal and drills it, which good on him, because Jason Myers has been a good field goal kicker, good kicker in the league for a while. I was kind of bummed out when he missed the first one because I felt bad for him, but got redemption there. But yeah, the Seattle team's still fun, man. Like, even if it's not the same Seattle of like week 5, week 6, right? The offense is taking a step back. Sure, the defense has been exposed and they have a brutal matchup. Yeah, beating a team 3 times this season, but San Francisco's run game against Seattle's run defense just naturally does not match up well for Seattle. So I do think the season ends next week, but how about the Seahawks team? Nobody saw this coming. I predicted this team to have 4 wins this season, and they get in as the 7th seed in a bad NFC, but granted, they get into the postseason. I'm so impressed by the Seattle team, and now I want to know, is Pete Carroll coming back next year? Bill Belichick just announced he's coming back for next season, so does Pete Carroll want to run it back one more time? I'd be interested to see what that might look like. Him and Geno reuniting, another good draft maybe under their belt. I mean, last year's draft was insane, and a way higher hit rate than normal. But anyways, impressed with the Seahawks team during the playoffs. Let me get off that tangent. Let me talk about the Ravens. I'm going to keep them here at 10. Look, Bengals fans, don't worry. You're moving up a little bit once we get to the next screen, but I just am not going to penalize the Ravens when Anthony Brown is going against Joe Burrow. And like, no disrespect to Anthony Brown, because like, if he's your third quarterback, I think that's an okay situation. That's not too bad. That's like, I have seen far worse third quarterback, players out there. But that said, Joe Burrow, elite franchise quarterback, third stringer, and Anthony Brown, that's going to be as wide a QB discrepancy you're going to have all season long. So I'm not going to hold that against the Ravens, because Harbaugh and crew were dealt a pretty large disadvantage. And plus, like, a pissed off Cincinnati team about the coin flip, and like literally Mixon scores a touchdown, does the coin toss celebration, which that was fire. That I got to give him credit there. But like, everything was basically pent up against the Ravens. Next week becomes the interesting matchup, because it sounds like Lamar Jackson's going to come back. And now you don't have the coin toss element. You kind of lose some of that motivation. And can the Bengals beat the Ravens 2 weeks in a row? I bet you Baltimore's going to be fired up this week to get some revenge. So that next week becomes way more important. So that's why I didn't want to move the Ravens off the 10 spot. I moved Miami up a handful of spots. I guess it's kind of similar to the Jags, where like, well, damn, now I've seen that defense win a game, because yeah, Skylar Thompson really ain't it. Like, I guess the offense elevates him to a point where you can suffice. But man, next week, do you start Tua and Teddy? Like, the health of those quarterbacks is just going to dictate. Because if it's Skylar Thompson against the Bills, yeah, it's not happening. But Teddy, I'm still pessimistic about that. But maybe if the defense balls out and Josh Allen's turned the football over. And then you get to Tua, who I think could, with how he's played this year, that offense, when he's in the lineup, maybe they could go blow for blow with Buffalo. But I just can't see where you reasonably put Tua Tagovailoa back on the field. He's battled 3 concussions. It's only been 2 weeks since the last one. I just can't see it happening. So I think Miami, congratulations, you're in the top 10 to end the regular season. I am anticipating a first-round bounce against your division rival in Buffalo. But it's still a very impressive season. And it's still kind of amazing they made it as a 17 considering how much he cooled off. So hopefully next year we can have a fully healthy Tua and we can see what this offense really looks like. And hopefully, Mike McDaniels with another year of head coaching experience, specifically in the area of being able to beat how teams handle his system. Right? Like, how do you counteract that press coverage, that inside leverage, all that sort of stuff we started teams do to Miami down the stretch. Anyways, let's move on to the top 8 now. I got the Vikes and the Chargers switching places because of the results. These two teams have traded between 7 and 8 over the last couple of weeks for me. I think they're right around the same spot. And they're kind of the same team where, like, any lead that's not 3, I'm not sure it's safe. Like, these teams seem to only be able to play 3-point games, specifically in wins. But Vikings wins, I'll move them up. Chargers lost, which, again, fourth quarter was no Justin Herbert. I think if Herbert and the starters stay out there, they do beat Denver. But even the fact that game was close is a little disheartening if you're a Chargers fan. But nonetheless, you played your backups down the stretch. Doesn't really matter to me. Cowboys down a couple spots. Man, that was as ugly a way to enter the postseason as I've seen in my lifetime, I think. Granted, I'm only 25, so maybe another reason or another time where it was even crazier or even uglier final week. But man, so as promised, the Titans, they run so much on early downs, but at least they have Derrick Henry. Dude, Kellen Moore, I love him as an OC, but that was a bad day at the office. Just as bad as Dak. Like, those two had as bad a days at the office you could possibly have. But let's just take the pick 6 for Dak Prescott, like that entire drive. And this is going to be a little long-winded, so skip forward if you don't really care. But you have the almost pick 6 for Kendall Fuller. Dak decides no huddle. I'm basically going to run the same play. And then chucks the pick 6 to Kendall Fuller, like as if going no huddle is going to force the defense to stay in the same, type of play. Fuller houses it. And then the next drive, they run on first down. And Kellen Moore calls another run play to set up a 3rd and 5. I'm like, you're down 13-0. Like, do you want to win this game or no? And then they end up punting. And it's like their insistence on running on early downs really prohibited them from making any sort of comeback. But also this Dallas team, they were down 13-0. Joey Sly left another 4 points on the board with a missed field goal off of a botched punt, and then a mixed extra point as well. So you look, the game should have started 17-0, and it would have been 17 Washington points off of the mishandled punt, like the snap was offline, the punter had it go through his hands, whatever. That set up the Terry McLaurin touchdown. Then you have the Turpin muffed punt that resulted in a missed field goal. And then you have the pick 6, and then the missed extra point at the end of that. It's just like, dude, you spotted them all those points. How different is this game if you're not falling behind 13-0 when in reality it should have been 17-0? Yeah, really ugly way for the Cowboys to enter the postseason. I guess the one bright spot is like, well, damn, you got that all out of the bag. Okay, now it's out of the system. Like, specifically that pick 6 from Dak Prescott. And also, he finished this game with a sub 50% completion percentage. He is too good of a quarterback. And specifically, what I like about Dak Prescott is his ability to play from the shoulders up. He is way too good to be making this no huddle, I'm going to make that throw, pick 6. Like, that was as bad a decision he could have possibly made. And it's just baffling that it came from Dak Prescott. So at least you got all the bad stuff out before you get into the playoffs. But definitely not the momentum you want to carry into the playoffs. Then we get the Bengals up a spot. I mean, Cincy, it got kind of interesting, I guess, close. That game felt like it never would end. But the Bengals handled business. Jamar Chase, that touchdown was awesome. Joe Burrow slinging it. Joe Mixon, again, that touchdown celebration was awesome. This offense looks really, really good. So, but now they get the tough task of beating a team not only 3 times, you see them for a 3rd time this season, but you got to beat them 2 times in as many weeks. That's rough. 49ers are down a spot, but again, that's partially because this is the final power rankings. So let me talk about Philadelphia first. Philly is up to 3. Jalen Hurts returns, and it wasn't necessarily perfect. And hey, how about Kenny Golladay and that touchdown he had late in the game? Nonetheless, I just wanted to shout that out. It wasn't a perfect game from Philadelphia, and Jalen Hurts, like that one play, I think it's 3rd and 2 or 2nd and 2 or something like that, and he slides way before the mark, and it's like, okay, we're starting to play with some more precaution now. Interesting. But nonetheless, eventually comes through, and this team can win in so many different ways that even if Jalen Hurts isn't great, you can still lean on Miles Sanders. So you can still have A.J. Brown get you some chunk plays, and that defense is still really solid. So I'm not really worried about the Eagles, and they won the NFC for a reason, right? So then I have 49ers moving down a spot because of that. They're the 2 seed, and it kind of sucks to move them down because they ultimately dominated the Cardinals, and they have ton of good momentum going into the postseason. So I hate to move them down on this, but they're still a number 4 team. So if you're a San Francisco fan, you're still in the top 4. Don't kill me. But yeah, what a way to end the regular season. Just absolutely obliterating the Cardinals off the face of the earth. Good on San Francisco. Then the top 2 stay the same. Chiefs, They clinched the 1 seed. Now I understand. Now, hold on. Now I got to have this argument now. Well, you have the Eagles ahead of the 49ers because they're the 1 seed. Well, that means the Chiefs should be ahead of the Bills. Yeah, but the Bills also had a game not finished. And the Bills could have won that game. So the Bills, had the season played out under normal circumstances, might have had an opportunity to be the 1 seed. So there's my caveat. And I also think, hey, if these two teams go head to head, I take the Bills. I think the Bills would be favored on a neutral site. We'll find out in the AFC Championship game, I think, because I think these two teams will see each other in the AFC Championship game. So we'll see what Vegas thinks. But yeah, I got the Bills just ahead of the Chiefs, but these are two of the best teams in football. So can't really go wrong with either one of those. But, talking about the win for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, that first touchdown to McKinnon, he's just a wizard. The defense makes some plays, creates some turnovers against a pretty bad quarterback, so that's good to see. I saw the pass rush too, a ton. Chris Jones, a couple sacks. And then the Bills, the Pats gave you a good run for your money, but eventually the offense gets there. You get that chunk, that not even chunk play, that bomb to Stephon Diggs. He finds the end zone. But Nyheim Hines is the unsung hero of this contest. And that opening, I'm getting goosebumps thinking back to it. That kickoff return to start the game. What a powerful way to begin the contest, and did it for DeMar. That was a win that I don't wish I was in a hospital, but I kind of wish I could have just experienced that moment with him, be a fly on the wall, right? Because that must have been so cool. But yeah, big win there for the Bills, and now they set up a spot where if they're in the AFC Championship game against Kansas City, it's going to be a neutral site. So I think that win was a big one, as well as clinching up the 2 seed. But that's going to do it for my final regular season power rankings. Let me hear your thoughts. Seriously, I make these videos, I make this channel just to start a conversation. I love talking football with people, so let me hear your thoughts. Where's your favorite team? Where do you think they are going into the offseason? Where should they be on these final power rankings? What do you want to see your team do in the offseason? Or if your team's in the playoffs, how far do you think your squad makes it? Love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, seriously, it would help me and the algorithm a ton if you left a comment, but also drop the like. If you're new around here, want to see more football content, a ton of videos coming out your way this week, hit that big red subscribe button so you can see it all in your timeline. That's going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Until next time, my name is Tej. I'm signing off.